I'm joined in the studio now by Andreas Krieg, who's an assistant professor in defence studies at King's College here in London. Thanks for coming in. So just to go back to the Iraqi Prime Minister's statement, will that be enough to reduce the temperature, do you think, and to persuade the Saudis and the UAE that this money didn't go to armed groups?
I don't think so. I think the issue has been, for the entire time, has been to just look for excuses that could potentially be justified, could potentially justify what has been going on. I think the problem here is not whether money was paid or not, and whether this has actually reached these groups on the ground. I think the Saudis and the Emiratis are very concerned about that money was paid, that there was an intention to pay that money that would potentially go to these groups on the ground. And I think it doesn't matter whether the Iraqi government has now hold of it or not.
What about, I mean, Qatar in the past has been a mediator in these kind of situations before. Talk us through the kind of history of this and why this would be different.
I don't think it's very different. I mean, if you look at the history of Qatar or post-1995, it's a country that has always invested into mediation, negotiation, trying to be an intermediary between different groups, non-state actors and state actors. Qatar has always realized that in this day and age, you also need to talk to non-state actors. By just looking and trying to deal with state actors, you're missing out at least 50% of what's going on in these conflicts. So they've mediated with different groups. That doesn't mean they have supported them, doesn't mean they have given money to these groups, but they said we have to have some channels of communication with these groups. And so they had intermediaries there. They had intermediaries with Iran, they had intermediaries with Hezbollah, with the Houthis, because they have been asked by the international community to do mediation. And they've done that very successfully. And funny enough, they've been asked as well by the Saudis and the Emiratis and the Americans to fulfill that function of a mediator. They were asked to have these kind of links in Iraq, to have these kind of links in Yemen, and then make use of it. And they've helped the American government and the French government to basically mediate on their behalf. So,
for releasing hostages, you mean? Or
for releasing hostages. So what would it be different now? So obviously Qatar as a government has a duty of care to their own citizens. They've done it for other citizens. Why wouldn't they do it for their own citizens? And they've just done exactly the same.
What about the mediation in this case of Kuwait and the role that they're playing? There seems to be today a message coming from the Kuwaitis that perhaps there's some shift and that maybe that dialogue might start to improve the situation.
Well, let's hope for it. I mean, the Qataris have always been open for negotiation, and they said they will only resolve this crisis by negotiation. But you know, I'm a bit concerned, and the Qataris are concerned because until now nobody really understands what the UAE and Saudi Arabia really want. There's a list of grievances that has been publicly expressed, but whether these grievances are demands, we still don't know. Does it mean that just because they have a concern about X and Y and Z, does that mean that Qatar has to address them immediately? And is it realistic? Some of the demands, if they are actually demands, are not very realistic.
And how do you see this going? I mean, is there anything that can be put on the table at this stage that would make a difference and try and kind of actually bring this to a close sooner?
Well, it really depends on what is asked for. There are certain things that Qatar can do very immediately, which could be, you know, toning down some of the people that are living in Qatar and might have in the past been very vocal about certain things. But I think the biggest problem here is that Qatar in the last 3 years has actually been very compliant with the US, very compliant with GCC policy, and has done everything that is asked of it. And that's why everybody's so shocked and surprised that these kind of allegations are being raised now, because these allegations seem to relate to an era of pre-2009 or pre-2010. So Qatar is very, very compliant. Now the question is, what can they really do now to make a difference? I don't see it at the moment.
OK, Andreas Krieg, thank you very much for coming in. Thank you.